Hey movie fans! So in my last video I did a review of Arkham Asylum in preparation for Arkham Knight. Now I said I would be reviewing all the movies leading up to Arkham Knight, but given that I just beat Arkham Knight, I really can't wait any longer to talk about this, so eventually I'll backtrack and cover Arkham City. But I gotta talk about Arkham Knight right now. It's hard enough to pull myself away from the game long enough to review this for you guys, but I promised I'd get this review out to you. So here are my thoughts on the latest game, Arkham Knight. In short, it is fantastic. Well, that is if you played it on console, which my condolences to all of you PC gamers out there right now. I really am sorry for you. You guys are really actually missing out on a great experience. Now, I really loved this game, and I didn't know if it would live up to my expectations, because Arkham City is one of my all-time favorite games, and I was really excited for a sequel to that, and just something like a good conclusion to the Arkham franchise, because Origins was a huge letdown, and not that great overall. But does Arkham Knight live up to the hype? Is it really that good? In my mind, a resounding yes. It is fantastic. Now, if you're familiar with the Arkham games going into it, it feels very much like it, except a continuation of the Arkham stories that have already been told. The combat system is the same. You got the great punches and counters, but it feels very much an advancement on that same process. You have more weapons, but more enemy types as well. And what I like about this is you have a specific playstyle if you play these Arkham games. Like, you can go run and gun and just counter every once in a while. But you have to actually mix it up for this game. There's more enemies and more different enemy types. So you have to mix up the way you play, especially when it comes to Predator mode. Now, Predator mode is when you have a whole bunch of guys in a room with guns and you have to take them out quietly. In this game, the main villain, the Arkham Knight, well, one of the main villains, there's two main villains, the Arkham Knight actually will pick up on trends that you do when in Predator mode. Say you're like me and you do a lot of silent takedowns. He will say to his troops, hey, you guys double up so he can't take you out from behind, or check over there and check over there. He's going to take you out in this way. It causes you to change up your tactics and really think outside the box of how you want to approach your villains. And I really like that, as the game makes you think and breaks you out of this routine that you're in. Another break from the routine is obviously the biggest addition to the Arkham franchise in the Batmobile. The Batmobile is absolutely incredible in this game. It plays so well. Granted, it did take me a little bit to get used to the mechanics. It's not the easiest thing to control. Plus, and I'll get to it more in my negatives, but the Batmobile is a little bit overexposed in terms of how much they use it, but nothing can beat being able to roam around the city in the Batmobile, just being straight up awesome and being the Batman. It drives like the Batmobile should, and you just feel powerful in the Batmobile. It's fantastic. They absolutely nailed it. The story takes place a year after Arkham City, and it's basically the city that is coping with, I'll say it, the death of Joker. Spoiler alert for Arkham City. Joker died at the end of that. So it's been a year of more or less peace and quiet, until Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight basically assemble all the villains of Gotham to destroy Batman in one night. And without giving too much away, this is definitely Scarecrow's game. Yes, it's called Arkham Knight, and Arkham Knight is a good villain for the most part. This is definitely Scarecrow's game. Jonathan Noble voices Scarecrow in this game, and he was the crazy king in Return of the King, the Lord of the Rings franchise. And he absolutely kills it. He was perfect as Scarecrow. He really did a fantastic job in this. The Arkham Knight was also a welcomed addition, but, and I'll get more into it when I get into my negatives, once you start playing the game, their game really beats it over your head as to who the Arkham Knight is. It doesn't really know what subtlety is in some areas. The character is very fascinating, and I liked having a mental villain with Scarecrow teaming up with a physical villain, so you're getting attacked from all fronts as Batman. It made for an interesting dynamic. I also really like the dual play aspect, which was basically Batman teaming up with different allies at different stages in the game. Like, you can team up with Catwoman, Robin, or my personal favorite, obviously, Nightwing, which, just a little side note, it's wonderful actually being able to hear Nightwing's voice for the first time ever, as opposed to Arkham City, just the the only character that's mute, which is weird because Nightwing is a chatterbox. It's just weird to see him go and not talk or anything. But it's nice to hear him talk in this game, and actually, in my mind, he was like a bright spot. Not that this game is bad, but all the Nightwing scenes stood out because they really got that character right. They got a lot of the characters right in this game, as they have in all the other games. The creators of the games know the characters and they know the Batman universe. They litter it with Easter eggs. It's just fantastic. One of the best Easter eggs for me, and this isn't a spoiler, is Kevin Conroy voices Batman again. Because he's Batman. He's been Batman ever since Batman the Animated Series. And so, in that show, by far, obviously, the most famous line was when Kevin Conroy was like, "I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman." Like that was like the defining line, and that has stuck with the character of Batman ever since. For the first time ever, we get that in this game from Kevin Conroy, so it was like a nice nostalgic flashback hearing that. And I was surprised actually to hear that, but when I thought about it more, I really shouldn't have been, because Scarecrow's the main villain of this game, and in the very first episode that line was ever said by Batman, Scarecrow was also the main villain. So there's actually two nice Easter eggs tied into one very, very well. My last of the positives was a huge positive, one of the biggest in my mind, and that was the score. Nick Arundel and his team are the ones that have done all the music for... I'm sorry if I butchered your last name, by the way. But his team has done all the music for all the Arkham games, and by far Arkham Knight has the best music of the trilogy, and it's like film score level. It's phenomenal, especially during some of the really emotional scenes, because there are actually some really emotional scenes. It was surprising. There were some really emotional scenes, and the music really encapsulated that very, very well. They did a fantastic job. It wasn't just all run and gun music. There was a lot of good slow moments with beautiful pieces of music. But this game, frankly, is not perfect. Now, I said one of the biggest positives of the game was the Batmobile, but the Batmobile also is one of the biggest negatives in my mind. The game creators were so proud of the Batmobile that they insisted on having it appear over and over again, even when it didn't seem really necessary. I loved driving around and playing in a Batmobile, but there are some times where I'm just like, I would much rather just do this on my own, but I like shoehorned into playing in the Batmobile for this situation because they really want me in the Batmobile. And it was kind of got annoying after a while. Okay, let me do Batman stuff without the Batmobile now, if that's okay with you. And a tank is essentially what the Batmobile is in this game. And a tank is a powerhouse. It shouldn't be hiding in the shadows. So you should not do stealth tank missions. There's a couple times in this game where you have to, like, more or less sneak around other tanks to take them out. And that got really difficult and more or less annoying, because that's not the purpose of the Batmobile, is not to sneak around, but to face enemies head on. That's why you have the Batmobile. Another main gripe I have is the Arkham Knight as a character. The build-up was really, really good, for the most part. Like, the game really beats it over your head as to who this character is. Like, subtlety's gone. Once you play the game, like, third or halfway through, you can pretty much figure it out for yourself, because the game will basically tell you who it is. It's not subtle in that regard. But also, when this said character gets unmasked, it kind of just lets out all the steam of his momentum. Like, after that moment, nothing really happens with that character anymore. It was weird. I don't know how to say anything other than it just kind of deflated, like the bottom fell out of that character. My last real gripe is that I love seeing all the supporting characters, but we didn't really get a lot of time with them. They're relegated once again to side missions, which is more than we can say for Arkham City, which was just extra content without the help of Batman. Like, dual play was great, but I would have liked to have a little bit more of it. Like, we only got maybe 3 missions each. But it was a pleasant surprise as to, I won't spoil anything, but the 3 characters that you see in the trailers, Catwoman, Nightwing, and Robin, aren't the only ones that you will team up with. Not going to say who else, but it was a pleasant surprise being able to team up with these different characters that I didn't actually expect. Well, overall, overall, this was a fantastic game with great story, great gameplay that you've come to expect from the Arkham franchise, but continued improvement. It was a much darker, very dark story for the Arkham franchise, but in a very good way. It showed very good storytelling with fantastic music, great voice work, and overall pretty decent gameplay mechanics, unless you have a computer. Once again, I'm sorry for your loss. But an over-reliance on the Batmobile and a reveal of a main antagonist makes for an overall great but not perfect experience. But still, in my book, it gets a 9 out of 10 for its rating. It's just fantastic, and in my mind, it might actually be better than Arkham City, and it probably is my favorite of the trilogy, but there's really not a bad one to be had in the Arkham franchise, unless you count Origins, because Origins, whatever. Well, what do you guys think about Arkham Knight? Have you played it? Have you beat it? Are you interested in it? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like what you see and you want to see more, subscribe to the channel, or find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 17 Movie Reviews. Stay sharp, movie guys and gals.